Hey, what's up guys? It's Reed Young for TransformPoker.com. I'm going to be checking out a hand where we get check raised, and I think I have some pretty good tips for you guys about this particular situation and then kind of everything that goes around it. So you guys can see, just jumping into the action here, that we have just over 100 big blind effective stacks. We're in middle position with ace-jack offsuit. It also happens to be under the gun for this hand since we're only five-handed. So we go ahead and raise. I think that's definitely standard. The cutoff calls, the button calls, and we get two folds. So right away, we're going to be looking at some pretty Broadway heavy ranges, as well as some medium to smaller pocket pairs for the most part. Of course, there's also the occasional slow played big hand and a few other tricks up their sleeves, I'm sure. But if we're weighting the ranges, we're going to say they're a little bit more speculative. So on the flop, we flop top pair with a good kicker, and it's a very connected board. So right away we have a choice to bet or to check. I think a lot of our range would just be missed overcards here and want to check. Also, it can be a very difficult board on which to face a raise, so that might also warrant checking with a lot of your range that isn't going to have a lot of equity against a raising range that is comprised mostly of pair plus draws and stronger draws like combination flush draws, or even something like king queen has a lot of equity against our particular hand. So bet calling the flop or trying to bet 3-bet the flop probably aren't going to work out that well with ace jack. Even though it's top pair top kicker, there's definitely a lot of hands that have more equity on average against a raising range. I don't know if you guys can hear that squeaking sound. My dog's going crazy right now for some reason. But so on the flop, I think checking here is not a bad idea, especially if you're against one or two aggressive players who are going to see that check as weakness, which, like we said, it might be a lot of the time, but the board's just so connected that we're not going to bet it. So checking with some strong hands, because we're check folding so often, is a good idea. And it's also nice because we go ahead and avoid having to face a situation like we end up facing in this hand, where we continuation bet flop, get raised by the cutoff, and then we're put into a pretty difficult spot, especially because we're also out of position, so our reverse implied odds are pretty bad. So I would advocate checking here, but more importantly, and what I kind of wanted to talk about in this video, is your entire strategy is going to include accounting for every possibility. So what you want to think about is when you're betting this flop, like, how am I going to react to a raise? And if I call, what turns am I going to continue on? How many of those turns are there versus turns that I'm not going to continue on? So this board's so connected, and we don't have any backdoor draws, that there's so many turns that check folding is pretty clearly the correct play, even if bet calling the flop is if we're just looking at the flop, then it would be a close decision. So we might be drawing dead on the flop, we might be against a draw that has a lot of equity, and I would say it's extremely unlikely that he's raising a worse hand for value really ever. So right away, the flop decision by itself is very close, and then you have to account for all the future possible actions. So how often are we going to face aggression, and on what turns and rivers is that aggression going to manifest? So when you think of it that way, ace-jack is not that great on this board. So I think we can go ahead and check the flop and avoid some sticky situations. Let me know what you guys think about checking top pair top kicker here in the comment section, and I will see you guys next time.